Thank you everybody for coming. My name is Doug Bauernschmidt. I'm the Professional Development Manager here at AVI Systems. One small housekeeping item for you. If you're here for the CTS credits, please sign up with your name and your email address over here so that I can send you the quiz and the certificate afterwards. But that's all I have. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rob.
Am I on? Oh, awesome. Thank you. You snuck up on me there as well. Welcome, everyone. I'm thinking, though, we're in this wonderful place that maybe we can skip the presentation and kind of head over to the bar here, right? Give you the answers? No problem. No problem. Make sure I have my clicker here correctly. So I'm Rob Watley. I am the AVI UC practice manager. I have about 25 plus 30 to 30 years of experience. I reside in Tampa, Florida currently, and I got to tell you, I'm not too happy being here in Minnesota today. It's 90 degrees. I left Tampa, came here, it's raining, it's gloomy, and I still can't seem to actually wake up. Literally, I had an early morning workout. I can't work out. I can't wake up, I should say. Big time golfer. Only play on the weekends. I see you back there, Joe. Only play on the weekends, not during the week. Big time movie watcher as well. Love to watch movies. Anyone watch the End Game here recently? Awesome, right? Anyone? I want to make sure that we don't have any spoilers here, but it's pretty darn interesting how that thing came about. What about Game of Thrones? Big GOT watchers? Absolutely awesome, especially 2 weeks ago, was it? That was, I'm still can't sleep, based upon that. Another quick, about me is I'm going to Italy for the first time, May 18th, for 2 weeks. First time ever, by the way, that I've been on a vacation for 2 weeks. And I'm thinking to myself, now why haven't I done it before? And I keep thinking that, maybe 2 weeks is too long. Maybe they'll forget about me once, what happens, they forget about me while I'm gone for 2 weeks. So I'm going to take 2 weeks in Italy and travel the entire country and have some fun over there. So anyway, that's me. Actually, I've been here at AVI a little bit over a year now. Whoop, wrong way. So, quick agenda today. How you see got started, and again, that's from my actual viewpoint. Talk a little about the platforms you guys are probably all using today. Get into a little bit about the ecosystems, basically how all those platforms can be combined under one workflow. Talk about some of the trends that are driving changes that we see out there, huddle rooms and the like. And then at the very end, what do I do with all of this information that we just discussed? Objectives. Understand how UC has evolved and where it is now. Again, a lot of this is from my perspective, but I think a lot of you will understand where I'm coming from and probably recognize some of the pictures I'm about to show you. Be able to apply these concepts to ecosystems to identify your current business needs. Understand industry trends driving change in UC, and be able to implement initial steps to determine your company's UC needs. So, the beginning of UC from my perspective. I feel kind of confined behind this booth here. So back in 1993, there were David Allen and Harold Williams, you may not know those names, but Google them, were building hotels around the world, and one of which was in St. Thomas. So while they're building these hotels, after they were built, they started seeing these business people leave the hotel to go back to the United States or wherever to actually have their business meetings. Then they would fly back to the resort. So David Allen and Harold Williams decided to try to figure out a way to how to keep those business folks from leaving the resorts and stay to have their meetings. Research went for a couple of years. They came up with the philosophy around these suites. So in 1997, they developed this technology whereby you can sit in the same room across from another room that looked exactly alike over video. So they called it teledining at that point in time, and they put these rooms in 6 Hilton resorts, basically all over the world, one of which was in the Waldorf Astoria in New York City. So they built these suites. Let me get my notes here. So at that point, the terminology for telepresence came about. Now, you guys have heard, and ladies, have heard telepresence a lot. And it's not a Cisco term, by the way. I know you think that Cisco coined it because they call everything Cisco telepresence. But not true. Does anyone know where the name telepresence actually came from? Out of curiosity. There's an extra $2,000 for this one. I'm sorry? No? Decent guess, though. Anyone else? It actually came from a term that NASA had coined. And I'll read the definition to you. At the work site, the manipulators have the dexterity to allow the operator to perform normal human functions. At the control station, the operator receives sufficient quantity and quality of sensory feedback to provide a feeling of actual presence at the workspace. That's a NASA term that we got from a dictionary basically back in 1993, 95. By the way, I was part of this company, as you probably can already tell. So that is the definition of telepresence based upon NASA. We focus today actually on the actual presence at the work site piece of that definition. This is kind of how it looked like. This was telepresence that started in basically 1997, and in 1999, more suites were deployed. After deploying those 6 suites that were in these hotels, we also added a suite in the Savoy in London. So think about this. We had a suite in the Waldorf Astoria in New York. We had a suite in London. So we did some research, and those cities were basically the most traveled cities between each other. So what happened is once the technology and the folks found out about this, we offered them this digital airline. So as opposed to going to an airport and flying out, you would go to the Waldorf Astoria, you go to the London, and you'll have these meetings in these suites. And as you can tell with this rendering, that the suites are exactly the same on each side, right? So it looks like literally you're sitting across the same room. So then after a while, the companies who were coming to these hotels said, you know what? Why can't we just purchase these suites on our own? So finally, several companies stepped up to buy these suites. The first adopters were AOL, Time Warner, bought 4 suites. GlaxoSmithKline bought 6 suites all over the world. Capital One purchased 4 suites and put them all over the world. 3Com, Deloitte, the University of Arizona actually conducted MBA classes over these suites. And then Barrow Neurologic in Phoenix actually had live surgeries over these suites. So once it started, it pretty much never stopped. So after the initial deployment for these customers, HP came to us. I don't know if you guys remember the HP Halo at all? You do, way back there. HP came to us and said, you know, we want to do the same thing you guys are doing. How can we do this? Now, back in those days, we've sold all the patents since then. There was methods, we had methods and usage patents on our technology, which meant you could not design a room exactly the way we've designed our room. You had to get a license to do something similar. So for $1 million, we sold HP Halo a license, and that's how they got their start. Do you know who else who got their start with telepresence? Probably obvious. Cisco. You guys remember the Cisco CTS back there? Yes, no, CTS, 3-screen. CTS also, Cisco bought a license from us to sell their CTS, which is a 3-screen telepresence system. Then Teleris came on, then a few others actually came on and bought suites. So the telepresence industry started after that. This is how we did our teams back in the day with telepresence. You know, we talk teams now, but literally, as you can see here in this rendering, and by the way, I'm, you know, blog for myself. I'm in the right-hand corner right there in this picture. This is how we did our multi-point. We did our teams video. So everyone had to get up, walk to the rooms. It took an hour to set these meetings up. Right? It wasn't like go in there and click to join. So it took an hour. The technology we used were back in those days were VSX 8000s, which were, you know, Polycom. We used a Polycom MCU as well as 4 cameras in the middle of the screen. We had rear projection here, obviously. I got to tell you something about rear projection. You know, today we're on a lot of screens that pretty much have a lot of glare. The rear projection actually had a much softer image. So we were on these screens for sometimes 6, 8, 12 hours a day talking to our constituents across the world. The image was so soft that we had no eye fatigue. Today, that's not the case. I can't even blink anymore. I'm looking at the screen so much my eyes are dry. You guys are probably experiencing some of the same things. So rear projection, we had collaboration monitors right in front of the screen. So we did all our collaboration with the monitors, and then in the back of the room we had a whiteboard. So that's how collaboration was done then. So, but you had to leave your meeting, your desk to have a meeting. This was kind of a one-size-fits-all solution. So you see back then for me, and how it all started was based upon video. Just plain video, content sharing on the desktop. It was a video application, not like it is today. So, by the way, the name of this suite was called, this technology was called TeleSuite. Can anyone tell me who purchased this company in 2007? Yeah. The technology was purchased by Polycom in 2007. So this TeleSuite, as you see it on the screen today, which has changed a little bit, it's now called the Polycom Real Presence Experience. You guys heard of that, right? So 2007, they purchased the technology and changed it a bit, but it still exists out there, but there's not a lot of us buying these types of rooms these days. It's more of a at your desk type of experience. The new IT dilemma. My CTO talks about this, quite a bit. I think Greg from Rave earlier had a conversation about this earlier, about the different generations that are in our workforce today. So we literally can't design technology the same way because everyone consumes it differently. To steal a little bit from his thunder, actually he stole a little bit from my thunder from the breakout. Traditionalists were basically born before 1945. Baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964. I am a baby boomer. Generation Xers were born between 1965 and 1980. Generation Y or millennials were born between 1981 to 1995. So as he talked earlier, the traditionalists, who are the oldest, as far as these 5 generations, by the way, that are in the workforce, which is kind of unheard of, They want, the technology that we have for them today is too complicated. The millennials think that the technology that we have today is too complicated. So we have this big monster chasm between the traditionalists and the millennials and Generation Zs. But as Greg from Wave said earlier today, is that we probably should be focusing more on the Generation Ys and the millennials. So in your businesses, I have to ask this question. Do you guys know the ratio of, if you have 5 generations potentially, I don't know, but do you know the ratio of your millennials and your Generation Xers and Generation Zs at this time? Any idea in your company? No? Which, it's an interesting, that's why we're having this class today, because that's some of the things we're going to be talking about a little bit later on. Let's talk a little bit about platforms. This is the Magic Quadrant solution for 2018. You can see the leaders up there, Zoom, Cisco, Microsoft. By the way, has anyone used Logame? And I'm not familiar with Logame. Tell me a little bit about that if you could. Is it?
It's a full-featured remote management tool.
So is it an actual meeting solution though? It doesn't sound like it.
No, it's more of a
Got it.
everybody's trying to be everything.
That's true.
That's their
Gotcha. So the leaders, we all know and love, Zoom, Cisco, Microsoft. I'm actually a little interested about Zoom. Interesting about Zoom is that they're relatively new player here. I looked back at the Gartner's meeting solutions, and July of 2016, Zoom was not even on the Magic Quadrant for meeting solutions. They just came out of nowhere, and actually it seems like they're taking over the world based on their simplicity. We see some startups like Starleaf, Blue Jeans, and VidYO, or Visionaries. I'm not too sure about that one. LifeSize is a niche player. Remember back, years and years ago, LifeSize was basically the only codec that you could pretty much buy. It had HD quality and all that. They've kind of become a niche player. Google is an up-and-comer as well, as part of a platform perspective. Who's missing here, out of curiosity? Do you see a big glaring miss? I'm actually shocked that they're not up here. Polycom, or Poly. And I'm kind of curious why that is. Is it because of their recent acquisition from Plantronics? Are they considered a top meeting solution? How many of you guys have Polycom in your environment now? So a few. What's your thoughts on this? Is it misrepresented here or not? I don't know. I'm not sure why they're not there at all. It'll be interesting to find out, if somebody has an answer for me. So let's talk about Cisco a little bit here. So Cisco, of course, it's always confused me because they've always had so many different things, if you will, to sell. The on-premises cloud, the private cloud, service provider cloud, Cisco Collaboration Cloud, Jabber, used to be Movi, now it's Jabber's something else. It was always very confusing. But for many years, many CTOs would say a single platform to them meant Cisco. They recently, in the last year or two, purchased BroadSoft, adding to their cloud service. WebEx meetings and Teams are now a focus of Cisco. How many of you are just using Cisco as a platform? One in the back? Okay. Zoom, again, I just mentioned earlier, came out of nowhere. Literally, it just seems like one day they were there, the next day, one day they were not there, the next day they were there. Advertisements everywhere. You go to any airport, you see Zoom. IPO just came out, what, 3 weeks ago? Who bought? No one bought the IPO? All right. They just recently were certified as of the last couple of days for FedRAMP, which is a secure, the government can securely use Zoom for government meetings. And I think we have the Zoom rooms as well from a Zoom perspective. And I think when we were talking earlier about in the keynote, Zoom preaches simplification. So I think that from a millennial perspective, they tend to lean more towards this than anything else that's out there. And I got to tell you, now we have to be agnostic here at AVI. Zoom is one of our plays, but I use Zoom quite a bit as well, especially when I want to invite someone, to a meeting that, maybe just a friend, or it's just such an easy platform to use. And they have their cloud, of course, with their cloud connector, so you can actually use it to register your endpoints. Anyone here using Zoom as a single platform, as their only platform? All right. Next we have Google. Oh, by the way, one last thing about Zoom. From a Cisco perspective, Zoom is the only platform that I have seen a company rip and replace Cisco for. I've seen it a couple times. Very interesting, very interesting. Google is a competitor with Microsoft because of the calendaring and their Gmail. So they are the only company that I know have actually replaced Microsoft in an ecosystem because of that. Anyone here, and by the way, from most of the Google G Suite users that I know of are schools. A lot of schools are using the G Suite. Anyone here that are using Google as their only platform? There's a trend here. And then you have Microsoft, of course. I think every platform out there, I think, is trying to somehow integrate or interop with Microsoft. They are pervasive in our industry. Outlook, just by itself in Exchange, makes them so pervasive. I'm not sure if anyone here does not have Outlook. I know I use it. It's a part of my workflow. SharePoint, OneNote. They have Skype for Business, of course, which is, they say is going away potentially, but not so much. It's still going to be an on-prem solution, but it's very, very prevalent out there. So another question for you guys, and ladies, sorry. Skype for Business has been rebranded 4 times. There's a 5th, but 4 times over the last 15 years, maybe? Does anyone know what it's been rebranded for? There's 4 different iterations of Skype for Business. And by the way, for me, this was literally the first unified communications platform, true, that we know today that I recognized. So anyone know what those 4 iterations were? I mean, I'm sure you can name a couple of them off pretty quick. Link's one. Skype for Business. Office Communicator. There's one more before Office Communicator. LCS, Live Communications Server. So 4 iterations of Skype for Business, and now we have the 5th one. Microsoft Teams. I got to tell you, this is Teams is a disruptor in all different forms. Slack and Teams from Microsoft. WebEx Teams is pretty much a big disruptor. Lots of companies are in the process of rolling this out, keeping Skype for Business on-prem. Teams, we're in the process of doing it as a company, ourselves. I was asking someone in the room the other day, earlier today, they're in the back room there. And I'm asking the question now. some of you guys are network folks. When you are going to the cloud, strictly to the cloud, no hybrid situation, are you getting rid of your MPLS? Do you need MPLS? No? No answers? I'm curious. It's a question that I'm trying to find out myself. My friends in the back of the room there said MPLS is, it's pretty much a done and gone away. It's an ancient technology. But I'm just curious to know if you are going to a cloud infrastructure, why would you even need MPLS? Right? I would assume you're running all of your circuits directly to the cloud. Of course, there's Azure in the cloud as well. So I've asked all of you on purpose, how many of you are using each platform individually? One hand went up in the back. Because most of us are talking platforms, talking ecosystems instead of platforms. Now, as the slide says, the language of platforms is specifications. I remember going into clients years and years ago, the Coca-Colas of the world, and asking them what kind of infrastructure you had. Was it, Polycom? Was it Cisco? What kind of endpoints? Was it H.264 SVC? 256, H.323? What voicemail features you have? On and on and on and on. While the specs are important, they can only define the best performance defined in an environment. They have less to do with value than capability. Today, we speak in terms of ecosystems. This is a discussion that starts with how we expect users to consume technologies we deliver. Xers and millennials expect technology to be enablers. This is a generational perspective on tech. So we talk a little bit about the IT dilemma. This is kind of where we go with that. Without determining your use cases for your company, how do you know what technologies to use? Without understanding the workflow of your company, that's actually a big one. You need to find out what single workflow that everyone could potentially use and adopt within your company. Adoption is huge. I'll tell you this, there's several companies out there that I know of that have traditional UC or AV equipment out there they're doing meetings with, and it is working absolutely perfectly, but no one's adopting it because they designed it for one size fits all and not knowing what their actual users actually need to work with. Works perfectly fine, but no one's using it. It's either too hard, it's too old, or it's too complicated. So now we introduce the promise of UC. Test question, by the way. So we introduce the promise of UC as one platform that connects anyone, anywhere, and enables your work product. What's your work product? It's your phones, it's your PCs, it's, if you're in an airport and you need to log into a meeting, it's, whatever application you're using, it enables your work product. This is how I see the world right now. This is an old slide, so there's no Teams on here, there's no WebEx, I don't think, so we need to figure out a way to straighten out. We need to change Polycom to Poly. So there's a lot of things to change on this slide. There's two beliefs, again. One is unified means a single brand, Cisco, like Cisco to some people. To me, it means the best applications integrated into a single common workflow and user experience. Yes. Absolutely. You're unifying different platforms into an ecosystem. That's why I asked the question earlier, right? Because I realized that no one here had said they were using one single platform. So all of you are using a combination. Everyone is using this. So you need to find out a single collaborative workflow to make all those. This is not going away. So what's the workflow that's going to make all those integrate with each other? Integrate or interoperate with? Extremely important. This is how the world is today. It's not going to change anytime soon. You're going to have multiple platforms, and all of you sound like you do. That's why I asked the question. A little bit about trends. Virtual teams. 85% of knowledge workers work on virtual teams. This stat just kills me. 41% never met in person. Right? That's amazing. I know we used to talk on phones and things like that, but 41%, that's a big number. I've always liked to say, though, one of my philosophies is meeting people, a person on video, takes the awkwardness out of meeting with them in person for the first time, because you've gotten all through the small talk and everything else. So meeting them on video actually helps. The rise of huddle rooms is very significant. Look at the ratios. Whoa, what is that? Oh my. Somebody open the door. So, rise of huddle rooms, the ratio of meeting people used to be 75-1. Now it's 10-1. And in the future, it will be 5-1. So we all need to make sure that we have enough. There's going to be so many of these rooms out there. We need to make sure we have the financial wherewithal to purchase a few of these, because there's going to be a lot that are needed. And then millennials and then GeForce Workforce want to meet, want to have face-to-face interactions and expect, of course, flexibility. True statement here. This is from Forbes. Your employees need video communications. 92% say that it has a positive impact on performance. 82% says that it creates a greater sense of trust. 91% says it creates a greater sense of engagement. I was talking to someone earlier that says that that their environment does not use video. And I told him that if you're not going to talk to me on video, I'm not going to talk to you. I need to see your face. And I got to tell you who's notorious for not using their video? Microsoft. They use it as a voice, pretty much only platform. You literally have to force those guys to use their video, which is amazing. It's Microsoft, right? Why would you do that? So finally, next steps. What do I do with all of this information? We talked about the IT dilemma. We talked about the 5 generations. We talked about the individual platforms, Zoom, Microsoft, Cisco, Google. We talked about ecosystems and work product. So we do this as a company, AVI. We have roadmap sessions with our customers. This is not a commercial for us. This is what you need to do as well with your internal customers. Have roadmap sessions. Define your user groups and use cases. Define your workflows, your pain points, obstacles to adoption. Determine the patterns and common expectations. Define business cases and foundations for designs. Define your user groups. Names of your user communities, what makes them a community of like users. Some of the questions that I would ask. Define your meeting types. Define your meeting expectations within your organizations. Policy-based meetings, problem-solving meetings, collaborative, sales, legal, trading. What kind of meetings? What kind of meeting types are you having? Define those. How do you meet? Define a meeting workflow. Where are the people you meet with? Are they in conference rooms, offices, homes, mobile? Are they repetitive? Are they scheduled? Are the rooms reserved? How are people invited? That's huge, huge. From a workflow perspective, I would want my email to have the ability, once I sent it out, that in all of your ecosystems, that anyone can click on that one email and one click to join and join any meeting from whatever device they're using. It's huge. So define your meeting workflow. After all of this is done, stick them in some type of continuum, like I have up here. Interact, entertain, absorb, and inform. You put them in a category, and now you can, at this point, you can start working on define your design phase, which types of rooms that you may need, or meeting spaces. Define it, put it on a continuum, then you know exactly the types of meetings you have, and then you can start working on, purchasing devices and rooms that fit into your environment. That's all I have, guys. Thank you very much. Thank you.